Hello, my name is Tara Ronsleben, and I am a graduate student with a certificate in human sexuality working on a master's in the field, and I think we should talk about music. If music be the food of love, play on. Shakespeare said that. And if historians know anything, it's that Shakespeare got laid. And if the 750 million search results that come up when you search sex playlist are anything to go off of, people still agree that sex and music are still very closely connected. But science also agrees, and there's more than one reason why. The most obvious reason starts with the chemical dopamine. Dopamine is the pleasure chemical of the brain. It's part of our brain's reward system that gives us a chemical pat on the back when we do something that would ensure survival, like eating, drinking, competing, and reproducing. Our brains are hardwired to seek out pleasure. It's why junk food is so good and so addictive. It's full of fat and sugar, which at the point in history when those parts of our brains were evolving were pretty difficult to find. Now they're not quite so difficult to find. Go to any gas station. But our brains are still constantly seeking out things that make us feel good. Both sex and music stimulate our brain to produce dopamine, and dopamine is directly related to our sex drive. Dopamine uses more than just the chemical parts of our brains to make us feel good. Dopamine has partial control over our blood vessels, our gut movement, our immune response, our insulin production. So listening to music, which increases dopamine in our system, can also do stuff like lower stress, lower inhibitions, increase relaxation, increase confidence, and kind of distract from some of those negative self-thoughts we have. Listening to music, because it increases your dopamine, also does things like increase your heart rate and increase your breathing rate. You know, like two things that happen when you're turned on. Dopamine also controls our movement. Ever notice how people instinctively start moving when music comes on? Even babies will bop up and down when they hear a beat. If you put on music during sex, our bodies are naturally going to start moving to the rhythm of whatever you've put on, which is why it's important to think about what music you're putting on during sex. But we'll get to that later. So dopamine is the most obvious culprit for why sex and music are so connected in our brains. But there's a lot more going on there. Music has been a part of culture since the beginning of time. Pre-language, we had music. Animals used what we would call music to communicate with each other. Birds will sing to attract a mate. Wolves will howl to communicate across long distances. You may have heard Darwinian evolution described as survival of the fittest, but really it's more like survival of the sexiest. Look at a peacock. Peacocks have those big, beautiful, colorful tails, and you wouldn't think that that would be very beneficial for survival. They're cumbersome, they attract predators, but what else do they attract? Lady peacocks. Darwin assumed that music must be the same for people. Music isn't necessary for survival, but it's awfully attractive. Darwin wrote in The Descent of Man, "Musical notes and rhythm were first acquired by the male and female progenitors of mankind for the sake of charming the opposite sex." Now, obviously not all music is about sex. Celibate people also make music. Listening to the radio in the car with your friend does not mean you want to jump into bed with them. Cognitive scientist Steven Pinker calls music auditory cheesecake, meaning non-essential. It's a byproduct of language, but it isn't necessary for human evolution. But music creates connection. Studies promote the idea that listening to the same auditory stimulus, be it music or watching a movie, listening to a story, will sync the breathing rates and the heart rates of everyone in the room listening to it. Now, syncing breathing and heart rates is a key component of tantric sexuality, as it is believed to increase sexual energy and increase connection between two people. Music is also inherently sensory. The same parts of our brains that process sound also process our other senses, and include processing those erogenous parts of our body that are particularly sensitive to sensory input. A German study proved that music can also alter our perception of our other senses. Lead researcher Tom Fritz said this of the study, which used a robot that gently stroked the forearms of participants while they listened to different types of music. He said, "Music seems to change our perception of touch. Certain features seem to be transferred from music to touch. We have observed that the sexier we perceive music, the sexier we also perceive touch that is administered simultaneously." Presumably he said that in German, but the idea is still there. Sexy music makes touch feel sexy. The same touch, while listening to aggressive music, will probably make that touch feel more aggressive. Just think about how the song played in the background of a movie scene affects your perception of the actions happening in the scene. Arousal begins in the brain. Sexual sensory input is the start of physical arousal. Studies showed that people who listened to sexually suggestive music were much more likely to be interested in having sex when presented with potential partners. A French study showed that women who listened to romantic music before going out were much more likely to give out their numbers than women who listened to neutral music before. And according to a survey of 30,000 people conducted by Daniel J. Levity, who's both a neuroscientist and a former member of Blue Oyster Cult, 67% of people stated that they were more likely to have sex when they had music playing regularly in their homes. The survey also showed that those who listened to music together at home spent on average 3 hours and 13 minutes more time together than people who didn't. Just more evidence of music's ability to foster connection and intimacy. Now, lyrics also have an impact on the way we perceive the tone of music. Men who are made to listen to music with misogynistic lyrics immediately measured much more negative perceptions of women compared to men who listened to neutral lyrics. And the same worked in reverse. Women who were exposed to man-hating lyrics immediately felt much more negative towards men. Now, granted, all of this is connected to your personal preference. If opera is more your jam, then a stimulating aria is more likely to turn you on than a honky-tonk line dance song would be. And your preference in music is going to impact what you consider sexy music or romantic music as listed in these studies. Best case scenario, you and your partner or partners all have the same taste in music, and you'll be able to put together something that is equally stimulating for everyone in the room. However, you never know if your favorite love song is the song that your partner cried to in the car the last time they got dumped. So there's an art, and obviously lots of science, to creating a playlist for sexy times. What do you need to make the perfect sex playlist? Let's explore. It's research time. Glasses on. I don't think I would personally choose a playlist that's only 10 songs long. Right? Is it songs about sex or songs that make you feel sexy? You may want to just completely avoid lyrics. Some would recommend binaural beats. Binaural beats are audios with two tones of slightly different frequencies played simultaneously that cause an auditory illusion where your brain creates a new third tone with a frequency equivalent to the difference between the two tones being played. For example, if the tone in your left ear is 405 Hz and the tone in your right is 415 Hz, the brain creates a binaural beat with a frequency of 10 Hz. These are often used during meditation as they create similar effects on the body. But some say specific frequencies are particularly useful for inducing sexual arousal and increasing the intensity of an orgasm, and are excellent accompaniments for tantric sex. Is this turning you on? You want the right energy. You want the right tone. You want the right lyrics. You want the right length. You want the right tempo. B.B. King. B.B. King had something like 15 kids, so he probably knows how to make sex music, right? This playlist is almost 24 hours long. They aren't fucking around. Or they're solely fucking around. Do have to consider the name of the playlist as well. So if you have someone over and they ask what music you're playing, and you have to say, oh, this is my boning playlist number 3, you've played your hand at that point, haven't you? Should I light a candle to set the mood? Okay, I'm now at an even 90 songs. Got 5 hours and 32 minutes of music here. So at this point I wanted to see what I was working with when it came to this playlist. You can see that I hadn't gotten very creative naming it yet, but I did find a website that allows you to analyze Spotify playlists based on categories such as moods like happy, sad, wine glass, and dancing lady emoji, which I hope you often feel. The website will also show you the number of times different artists feature on your playlist, the decades those songs were released, and I believe it will also sometimes give your playlist a letter grade. My playlist clearly scored off the charts because it could not calculate one for me. Here's where it shows the most played artists on my playlist. I've got, looks like 3 that had 5 songs each, so definitely some favorites, clearly. I think I did a pretty good job, though, of having a lot of variety in artists, so most of them you see will only have 1 song each on the playlist. Here's where you'll see the analysis of the song's decades. Mine were primarily from the 2010s, which kind of surprised me, honestly. About half of mine were from that decade. And goes all the way through to the one song I have from the 1950s. So then I took a look at the side of their site that allows you to sort your playlist based on categories that are a little bit more niche than Spotify offers, like danceability, energy level, and tempo. Now, tempo is interesting as about 100 beats per minute is often cited as the ideal tempo for a sex song, as it matches the rhythm of hip movements typically made during sex. This is also the tempo associated with a lot of workout playlists and CPR chest compressions. You'll see right around here that I actually have a few songs that hit right at that magic number, but I also have a song that hits at nearly double that tempo. I do want to note that tempo is really only one component of a good sex song though, as you'll see in this next clip. this audio passes the test of being around 100 beats per minute, but it's just a recording of a train whistle. So, in conclusion, music and sex are wrapped up in each other, in the ways our brain works, in the ways we connect with each other, in the ways we share and experience pleasure. Music can excite us, music can relax us, music can make sex better. So if you want to know what songs I think are sexy, I have linked the playlist I made specifically for this video below, and I'd love to hear what songs you think are sexy and you have on your playlist. And if you want just 3 hours of that train whistle we heard earlier, DM me and I can make that happen for you. So, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, just push all the buttons below this video, actually. Thanks again. Bye.